Power and recognition, the superfluous, greed. Is this what defines the human being? In a society in which consumption is more and more preached as important, how are people who do not have the possibility of owning land helpless, marginalized, targets of prejudice and ignorance? This is the sad life, the difficult task of being a landless. This is the MST.
Social movements can be selected as an exercise of social classes or as the fruit of incurrent social practices with a social order. We must empathize it with the objective of a complexive relationship with the state. This is because they should change the composition of it. For the formation of the social movement, these groups are organized according to the project and a common ideology, which are present and proposed for the movement. Your server can be hierarchical, which can have a structure that enables multiple leaders. The forms of collective actions are used as a complaint, or marchers, strikers, among others. One such movement is the MST, Landless Rural Workers Movement. Its first words arose in the 50s, when there was an increase in unemployment, the fault of the mechanization of the field.
Os camponeses se reuniram primeiro em frente à sede da Associação dos Lavradores e Trabalhadores Agrícolas, mais conhecida como Liga Camponesa.
Como a sindicalização rural era um direito inexistente na prática, os trabalhadores do campo encontraram nas ligas o único meio legal para canalizar suas reivindicações.
Agrarian Reform in Law, or Agrarian Reform by Force. This was the biggest claim of the peasant leagues, formed by the rural workers who lost their jobs. Later, in 1970, the military regime imposed a model of agrarian reform that prioritized the colonization of vacant lands in remote regions, with the goal of exporting surplus population and strategic integration. Contrary to this model, some groups sought redistribution of unproductive lands. This pattern of colonization proved to be inadequate and eventually catastrophic for hundreds of families, who ended up abandoned, isolated, in an inhospitable environment, condemned to cultivate lands that proved unfit of agricultural use. GMST was officially born in 1980s, arguing that the expansion of the agricultural frontier megaprojects and mechanization of agriculture contribute to elimination small and medium-sized agricultural production units and to concentration land ownership.
In general, it is examined as three aspects: fight for land, fight for agrarian reform, fight for more just and fraternal society. For example, to solve serious structural problems of your country, such as the social and income inequality, discrimination of efficiency and gender, concentration of communication, exploitation of the urban work, trusting that the realization of agrarian reform, democratizing access to land and producing food is our most effective contribution to the realization of a popular project. Therefore, the MST also participates in the articulations and organizations that seek to transform reality and guarantee best social rights. Nationally, we participate in the National Forum of Agrarian Reform, coordination of social movements and permanent or conjuncture campaigns.
No Brasil, mais de 40 milhões de pessoas vivem no campo. São quase 4 milhões e meio de estabelecimentos rurais vinculados à agricultura familiar. Apesar de representarem a maioria das propriedades, elas ocupam apenas 1/4 das terras cultivadas. assim, é a agricultura familiar que produz 70% dos alimentos que são consumidos pelos brasileiros. Já as grandes propriedades do agronegócio produzem principalmente soja, milho, algodão, cana-de-açúcar e carne bovina. Todos commodities para exportação.
After 30 years, the MST is organized in 24 Brazilian states. Its organization structure is based on verticality initiated in the nuclei, composed by 500 families and followed by the brigades, group of up to 500 families. Regional direction, state direction, and national direction. Parallel to these structures, there is another one, that of the sectors and collectives, that seek to work each one of the front necessary for the true agrarian reform. The sectors of the MST are health, human rights, gender, education, culture, communication, training, progress, and finance, production, operation, and environment, and mass front. They are collective of the MST, Youth and International Relations. This sector develop alternative to conventional government policies, always seeking the peasant perspective.
The means practiced by the movement to promote its invasion in some determinate cases generate much controversy in the public opinion. In certain episodes that had repercussions nationally, the movement was accused of having been influenced by violence. In addition to having permeated its actions by the sphere of illegality, both when invading properties that, according to the state, were productive, as having some of its militants involved in depredations, fires, robberies, and violence against settlers from these farms.
Social movements in Brazil have always been targets of powerful Brazilian media. The mass media, under the domination of the dominant classes, transmit with their force of ideological pressure to society. Dead social organizations are movements that disintegrate the social, political, and economic system of the country. On being included in the social movements, the MST is constantly criminalized as a terrorist for carrying out controversial actions in favor of the movement.
A gente tem até alguns artigos na Constituição que vão dar ali algumas características de terras que elas podem ser utilizadas, né? Podem ser ocupadas, aliás. E eu acredito que se for feito da maneira certa, pode sim, porque são terras que às vezes estão lá paradas, né? É até um contrassenso você ter pessoas que estão procurando um lugar para trabalhar, estão procurando um local onde estabelecer ali a sua renda, a sua família, e ao mesmo tempo tem aquelas terras paradas. Então, eu acho que se for feito dentro da lei, dentro dos acordos, eu não vejo motivo para ser problemático, não. Obviamente, a gente sabe que tem os excessos também, né, de todos os lados, a gente sabe que tem gente que se aproveita desse grupo já para fazer outras coisas, né, que não vem ao caso, mas que acabam até manchando o nome do movimento, né? Mas eu acredito que é um movimento que é legítimo, é um movimento que tem que ser ouvido, né, pelas autoridades.
The realization of agrarian reform in our country faces several barriers, such as the resistance of large landowners, legal difficulties, and high maintenance costs of the settled families. This has marked a huge inequality of the distribution of land. On the one hand, a small number of large landowners, and large rural entrepreneurs, who monopolize most of the rural area of the country. On the other side, millions of small landowners and landless workers living in precarious living conditions.
Despite all the controversy and prejudice, the MST has already achieved several achievements. More than 8,000 properties have already been occupied. 350,000 Ciro families had the creation of primary and secondary school within settlements. Food fairs in small towns with products from settlements have already been made. Seeing this in spite of everything, the MST is a movement that conquering its space and conquering a place in the society.
The attempt to criminalize social movements and their leaders, as well as demonstrators and activists, is not of today. Making a police case the defense of legitimate rights and using the repressive arm of the state for the maintenance of the privilege of a few, to the detriment of majority that doesn't accept and legitimately tries to build a better, fair and less unequal world. The MST is an essential movement for the development of Brazilian society. Agrarian reform is a benefit and right for a large part of the Brazilian population. It's among many other reforms that Brazilian society so longs for an agenda of eradication of misery and inequality, valuing the social function of the land, ensuring the rights of the farm worker, is at the same time defending his dignity as a Brazilian. And you, what have you done for a less unequal Brazil?